If you happen to see anybody pop up here, we're waiting for admission, just let them in. You should be good to go. Dan Steele, he is the Element Society. He is a proven hybridizer. He has several plants actually in cultivation, and I will admit they are super cool. Did stalk you. I went online and looked at the cool ones you have. Dan also got suckered into the club because he met me, and I like to bring all of my people I enable into one spot so we can all enable each other. And as Bruce said, share all of our love of plants. But Dan, I'm gonna let you do the full introduction because you know you better than I do.
Sure thing. I started growing Gesneriads, which are the relatives of the African violet. There's plants all over the world. I think the only place that doesn't have any native ones is North America, Antarctica. Other than that, they are everywhere else. Like I said, I started when I was 17. 17. And I remember when I was young, I thought, I was reading some of the magazines, oh, it was so cool to hybridize because there wasn't a whole lot of known species of Syningias back then. And I remember it's like, oh my gosh, I was 17, I'm getting ready to go in my 20s, and who is stable in their 20s to where they can devote the time? And I thought, by the time I get ready, everything will be done. Will be done. Well, there's, I think, at least plus 80 species or more of just Syningias alone, and the Gesneriid family itself is huge. So there's a lot of material. So this, like I said, this is all basic information, stuff that I discovered on my way before me, into that other stuff. So this is all common sense stuff. You're not going to get blown over with scientific principles or anything. Because one of the things I found was, whenever I try to encourage people to hybridize, they always say, "Oh, it is too hard. It's like it's too complicated. I can't do it." It is. It is not hard at all. It's very simple, and there's not a whole lot of slides I have with actual information. Everything else is just FYI stuff. Okay. All right, basics. What is a hybrid? Simple. It's the offspring of two plants or animals that are different species or varieties. Like a mule is a hybrid of a donkey and a horse. Hybridizing itself is just the process of creating one of those. Why do we hybridize in the first place? From an economic standpoint, it's to combine desirable traits from one plant, apply it to another, or like farming, basic industries like the floral industry. That's where like a lot of people are making money off of that. African violets, considering they start out with a single purple flower, and you got all these hundreds of different styles now. So anyways, there are some logical reasons for it. Personally, myself, I just did it for the heck of it because it's fun. One of the things that people mention, you got to be careful who you talk to when it comes to hybridizing. Some people think that they can dictate what a person must do. Well, you have to have this. You got to do that. You got to have a goal. No, you don't. It helps you keep a goal. Nothing wrong with that, but So you can have a golden, you can have a golden line, that's perfectly fine. Some of my hybrid lines will fold or. And then sometimes, just for experimentation purposes, I will do some crosses just to test dominance and how something is inherited. I did that, with variegated foliage and streptococcus. In the African violet family group, the seed pair has to be variegated or you can pass it on. In the case of streptococcus, I found that it can be passed through the pollen parents. Yay. Just one of those things I did. And then sometimes it's a matter of, what will I get if I cross things with this? This is cool, this is cool. And then occasionally, I have recreated crosses that other people have done because they've shown the plants. I love the flowers, but they had no intentions of releasing them or anything, but I wanted them. So I created them myself. I did the crosses. Cincinnati hosted, I guess, an area, society show, I forget how many years ago. And there was a cross there that, it was a cross of Ninja Agrodata and, something else to get on top, right? Hybridizing. And the flower was so cool. It was like in the sun hit it, especially with that hit. It was like it was glowing. It was really a cool plant then. But I had no intentions of releasing it, so I had the same two plants sitting in my transparent shed. So I called and did the deed. And I have it now too. The only thing is, if you're duplicating somebody else's cross, I was hesitant to release that. You could, but I think it would be kind of like a little faux pas. At least unless you talk to the person who did the cross. Tools of the trade. You can see this is not complicated. I have a nail and I have tweezers. The nail I have has those like beveled edges, so it comes to flat surfaces. I will use the nail to catch pollen off of a pollen sac for an insert. So it's a little pile of it, and then I can just move it flat. And that little picture there at the bottom has a nail with pollen on it that I collected from. I don't know what that picture is from, probably a Syningia. Tweezers you can use either to open the flower. Sometimes it helps to emasculate a plant, which is removing the pollen so it doesn't self-pollinate itself. That way you know that the seed that you get is an actual cross and not a self-pollination. It's not critical that you have to do that, but depending upon the flowers you're working with, it can help. I've tried emasculating some of the micro Syningias, which, like Syningia Priscilla from leaf tip to leaf tip, is only like about that big. And even if I emasculate it, somehow or other there's still pollen there. But I've had success though. Really kind of cool. Oh, if there's any questions that we know, just go ahead and let me know. How to produce a hybrid. This is about the last slide of complex stuff. The actual process of producing a hybrid is easy. You just move the pollen from one flower to another, from the anther to the stigma. Like I said, it's not absolutely necessary, but you can emasculate to help with that self-pollination. I seldom do it because I'm aware enough of what my plants are doing that I don't have a need. I mean, don't. In the Gesneriid family, what's the first one? This pollen is usually ready within a day or two of the flower opening up, which is important to know because you want fresh pollen. And then the stigma, where you want to put the pollen, is usually ready about 5 days after the flower is open. So you'll want a freshly opened flower to get pollen, and then find another flower that's been open a couple days, about 5 days, and pollinate that one. I mean, you can self-pollinate at the same time. This is not like a 100% ironclad rule. You can self-pollinate from a freshly opened flower to itself. And if that pollen adheres, once that stigma is ready, those pollen grains will still sprout. Now, I've not done a lot of work with, I want to mention cactus here since we are a succulent group. I've not worked with cactus flowers much, but from my observations, it seems the pollen is ready and the stigma is ready as soon as the flower is open, especially for these things that are old, you know, they bloom in a single day. I mean, you can't afford to be, you know, waiting. Trying to get my mind together around this. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Sorry. Now here's some pictures just to show the different flower parts. All right, oops, let me just here. Here's a pollen sac. This is where the pollen is from. This is a stigma. That little thing on the flower there that's kind of curved, that's a stigma. And then on the cardinalis flower here, I've got arrows pointing to where the stigma and the anthers are. This is a Syningia slovii. That is a calaria, and that is a Syningia cardinalis. I think some members in the club have grown Syningia cardinalis, Leucotricha, slovii, probably some others because of the tuber, the caudic aspect of it. But the important thing about hybridizing is just observing your plants and being aware of what the pieces and parts are. Because once you know that this is the pollen and this is the stigma, and you're able to identify it in your individual plants, you know that, okay, this needs to be here or over there or over there. So that's the mechanics of it. It's just simply moving, moving pollen from one place to the other. And that is something that's going to apply to any plant family: cactus, begonias, gesneriids, African violets, anything with a flower. And here's some pictures of some cactus. This is my night blooming thing. I got that from Kingwood Center when I was 17. And I forget what that one actually there was, but you can see we got the same thing. We got the open stigma right here and all the pollen. Same thing over there. One thing I've never been able to get is seed set. And I think from what my understanding that I've learned here is that a lot of cacti are self-sterile. They have to be crossed with another plant of the same species. And I think that is definitely one because I've had that. But it's fun to watch when they blow.
You could probably cross the two as well. Pretty easy.
You know, from what I've been able to pick up in the last year or so since joining the club, and watching YouTube videos, it does seem like the cactus are really accepting the pollen from just about any other cactus species.
Oh yeah, that's really.
Yeah. And here's a picture of begonia. Some flowers on some plants, the male and the female parts are on different flowers. A begonia will have a male flower that's got pollen sacs, and then they'll have a female flower that has the ovaries, which is that wing thing behind the petals, and the front of the flower being yellow, that's the stigma. It's yellow to trick the insect into thinking it's pollen. So after having come from a male flower, they go to that, they get disappointed because there's no pollen there, but they're brushing off pollen, fertilizing the flower. And you can save seed from your own begonia plants. I just actually noticed today, I was checking, I had tuberous begonias that set seed last year, so I just planted the seeds about the 1st of February, and they just started sprouting today. So that'll be kind of fun, because I've never grown tuberous begonias from seed before. Now, once you make that cross, moving the pollen from the parent plant to the stigma of the mother plant, how do you know if your cross took? In the gesneriid family, it's pretty easy. Usually the flower will fade and fall off within 2, 3, 4 days. And depending upon which genera of the gesneriid family you're working with, the stigma will get long and twist in the case of streptocarpus. Some of them will, the long tube will curl upwards, like in Smithiantha and Achaemenes, or sometimes it'll just simply swell up. And in the case of cacti, whenever I have played around, I find that the flower will start to wilt pretty quickly. And then the fleshy base at the flower continues to grow into a fruit, a berry, or whatever you want to call that. Here are some examples of developing seed pods. These are all syningias. So you can see that the style will die back till just about the tip of the stigma, and then you get the swelling. And that's what we got in all three cases. The one there on the far left, that has a seed pod that's ripe, that's just starting to split. That is a Cardinalis pyloric plant. This was a Syningia, oh, I forgot the name. Oh well, there's a lot of them. And here's some pictures of some cactus fruit. I borrowed these from the internet. I just didn't have any full pictures of myself. But I've had Christmas cactus, Thanksgiving cactus with berries that turn red just like that. The same, oh, and the dragon fruit, I've collected some seeds off of those, and those grow really quickly too. I don't care for the taste of dragon fruit. There's like no flavor. I can't see spending that much money unless I want to buy the seeds. That's what I bought them for, the seeds, not to eat them. Then how long till the seed ripens? In the case of gesneriids, depending upon the family or the genus you're working with, usually you're looking at anywhere from 1 to 2 months. Some are a little bit longer, like African violets can take up to 9 months, although typically they don't take that long anymore. When I first started growing back in the 80s, early 80s, it was a hard and fast rule, 9 months for an African violet. And I remember I had a seed pod ripen in like 3 or 4 months, and they called me out and said I didn't know what I was talking about, but kept my records, and it did. And I think they believe that, evolutionarily speaking, it took that long for the seed to ripen because the plant was waiting for the next rainy season to release the seed so that when it rained, it would help with seed dispersal. That too, and the fact that conditions were conducive to germination as well. There's a couple other plants like asclepias. They take a long time. I don't think they have a common name, but for the most part, with syningias and the gesneriid family, you're looking between 1 and 2 months for the seed to ripen, which is nice, when you're doing a multi-generational goal. And in my experience with the cactus, typically it's going to be, maybe a couple months. And when they're ripe, they turn red. And the ones that I've had, I'm sure there's exceptions to that. But from what I've seen myself, the berries, the fruits are always red.
The choyas and some of the prickly berries are exceptions.
Yeah, I did have
actually turn into the dry.
Yeah, I got a choya that grows outside that does not turn red, and several punches that one does turn very deep dark red. Yeah, some of them are
very subtle with the fruit.
Yeah.
But they're polycantha and what's it here? These
one of the funny things I always thought was whenever I'm weeding, I call it my desert garden. It's on the south side of the house, and I've got a number of cactus in there that are all winter hardy. And I always find it kind of funny that when I'm weeding, I am actually pulling cactus seedlings as weeds.
And probably, sorry, guys, say some of the reptiles will have white berries.
Yeah.
And there's a few other ones that will have orangey or yellow, and some of them they call them white, but it's more like a translucent type of look to them. So, but they're strange in many ways.
Yeah, and there's always exceptions to the rules. There, even in the gesneriid family, there's exceptions. But still, I mean, it's still cool growing anything from seed, especially when you've done the cross yourself. I mean, you've got that anticipation of, oh, look, my cross took, I got a seed pod from forming. And then when you plant the seed and they're growing and everything, and it's like, oh, I can't wait for it to bloom and see what I get. That is what draws you in and hooks you. Especially when you start seeing the results. Then I'm hopelessly hooked. I don't have room to really expand my hybridizing into a lot of other families. So I probably won't get in so much into the hybridizing succulents and stuff. But I do enjoy growing them though. And I did collect seed from my lithops last year, which I think the bees did that. That was kind of cool
The olive, Andy has told me because I'm set to, they're the 7 to 9 month range.
Yeah,
freeze ripened, they're super long.
Yeah, I think when you get into the areas that don't have a marked difference in seasons, those I think tend to have the longer ripening periods and stuff. I think that holds true with a lot of plants between cold and dry. I mean, cold and hot seasons and wet and dry are major players in that. But if you got like a constant thing, I don't know, maybe it's dependent upon your seed dispersers or something. Okay, what to do with the seed? Now, Gesneri seed is really tiny and it looks like dust. For the most part, think petunia seed and maybe think half the size of that. When I get a seed pod that's ripened, I will take some tissue paper, I cut out a piece and I make a little envelope that I store the seed in, and then I put that inside of one of those stamp collector's envelopes, and then I keep it in the fridge with some desiccant. They can last for years that way. Now for cactus, when I've had seed that's ripened, when the berries ripened, I will just take it and smear it, bust it and just smear it on some paper, and then just let it dry. And then once it's dry, then I kind of rub the seed out because the seed will be black. Usually well, you can't see how far apart. They're small. Seeds for the most part are small.
Most of them are coffee seeds, so.
Yeah.
The prickly pears are the exception.
Right. I was just going to mention they're larger. Yeah. So I just spread them out, let them dry, and then I rub them off. And if I'm not planting them right away, then I'll do the exact same thing, put them in some tissue paper, stamp envelope, keep it in the fridge. The reason, and there's a couple of Gesneris that actually have a berry, like the Cotinanthes and the Nemacanthus. I smear those out and rub them off once it's dry too, to prevent that, because that stuff that they're sitting in will fungus if you don't remove it from the seed. You'll end up with, you won't have a good germination rate if you don't get that stuff out, because it's designed by nature to go through a bird's gut. So the only thing that's left is the seed itself in a nice little pile of fertilizer. But you can always just plant them right away. You don't have to store them. You can just go ahead and plant them. Now, Gesneri seed, and I don't know about cactus seed, but I know Gesneri seed, begonia seed, most of them require light in order to germinate. So when I go to plant my seed, I just use a container with regular seed starting mix that you can get from Home Depot, Walmart, or whatever. Usually when I get it, it's kind of dry. So I'll put it in like a little bucket or something, a handful or two, and I'll put hot water in there, shake it up to get it to where the soil is evenly moist. I use hot water because it seems to break that hydrophobic aspect that soil has. Because, sometimes when you go to wet that soil, it just sits on top, it doesn't go anywhere. Well, in my experience, I use hot water as hot as I can get it, shake it up and everything, and it penetrates really well. I got my nice little flat, seed medium, and I'll put them in like one of those containers that, you can get from some of the frozen food stuff. They're flat stuff, or brownie pans. Some of those I'll get the little aluminum ones. I only use soil about an inch deep. Sprinkle the soil on top, the seed on top of it. Then I just set it, of course, you're going to have holes in there so that you get drainage. Set it on some water until the water wicks up and pulls the seed into the mix. Then I just let it drain. And I use a seed flat with the high domes. Set it in there, put it under the lights, and usually with Desmond seed, you can generally see germination begin as early as 5 days. Usually it takes maybe about 2 weeks. And I do want to stress how you grow your seed and germinate them, because I see people that will totally enclose them where there's no air circulation or anything at all, to where water beads up on the inside and everything. That will get your seeds growing. But the problem is, if you leave it like that, they typically are not getting any. They don't get the air circulation or anything. The plants are they get too juicy. That's the only way to say it. They're very juicy, and you know from the get-go you're going to have to deal with hardening them off, because you've got a 100% humid environment, and to get them down to room, air humidity, you're going to lose a bunch. So I use the flats with the high domes. They got little slots on the top, so you can open them up for air. I leave those open. I have good humidity, so I'm not having to water them a lot, but there's enough airflow and everything to where the seeds, as they grow, they're a lot stockier, unless you've really overcrowded them, which I've done. It just makes transitioning from the seed flat to a pot much easier. Okay. Now, this is what y'all wanted to see. What has he done? This is a Sinningia parisiana. This is one of my favorite Sinningias. I love that pattern that's on the flowers. The only bad thing about it is this has a terminal flower cluster, and once that bloom is done, it's done for the season. So it's like one and done.
It's not dead.
Oh, no, it's not dead. It will stay green. The flowers will either produce seed pods or just shrivel up and die, between if the hummingbirds have been active or not. But I keep the plant green. I mean, because they'll just be looking at, just this all summer long. Occasionally, if I see that there's another growth starting to come from the tuber, I might cut this one off to let the other one grow. So I might get a second cycle. But I got so many more typically do that. But like I said, this one of my goals was to get this flower pattern onto a plant that did not have a terminal flowering habit. I forget what they call those, but non-terminal, we'll just call it. That blooms in the longer season. And I had plants like that. This here is a Sinningia aggregata. It's non-terminal. It keeps blooming all along the stem until the end of the season. So I crossed it with Sinningia parisiana. It's a nice looking plant, but I was really disappointed with the flower. It's got the markings, but it's not as bold and in your face as parisiana was. But it's still nice. I mean, that was my first attempt. I still got it. It's been about 15 years or so, but so I tried another cross with Parisiana with Cardinalis. I think that's what a lot of people have grown Cardinalis right there. This species has been in cultivation forever and a day. The results of that was a plant with terminal bloomers, so still didn't get what I wanted there. But in this case, the flowers, the stems were very weak. They did not hold the flowers up very well. The markings, they're there, but they're hardly even noticeable. So, it is what it is. I wasn't happy with it, but there's other concepts with, in the hybridizing that if you got something that looks like it might be okay, there's two things you can do with that. You can self it, which means I can pollinate it with its own pollen and get a reshuffling of those genes, or I can back cross it to one of the parents to strengthen a characteristic that I want strengthened. So in this case, I selfed it. And as you can see, this one, it went worse. I didn't get any of the markings. The flower stems are so weak that they're just hanging there. I mean, I kind of like the color of it though, but you will have more failures than you have successes. This was a failure. The nice thing too, I'll mention here about growing the syringes. My way of growing is I usually will take the seed and germinate them, plant them in November. So I have the winter to grow them out. And by springtime, I usually, most syringes have a tuber. I'll have a tuber, oh, maybe about the size of a marble, maybe a little bit bigger. And then when the weather gets nice, I will cut off the growing tips, pot them all up and put them into bigger pots to put outside to get their second growth cycle. And I have found that about 90% of my hybrids will bloom on that second growth cycle. So I'm getting flowers within the first year from seed, whereas some of these indeterminate plants, you don't get, if you just grow them seasonally, you may not get flowers for 3 or 4 years. So I do start those in the fall just to get a heads up. And sadly, I had planned on bringing some hybrids, some seedlings to share, but we lost my mom this year and my plants did not, they didn't do well. So maybe later in the year I might have some that I can share, but just wanted to mention that when you grow, because you can see like the one there, that's got a good size tuber. When it comes to syringes too, one of the things I'll just throw out there is I'm a thing about watching your plants and what they're doing. There's been a lot of discussion on whether or not you should bury your tubers in the ground or grow them exposed. One of the things that I will do is, especially if I'm growing it from a species, is I watch to see what the actual seedlings do. Yeah, because there are some that they want that tuber buried, and others, you bury that tuber, you're going to just rot it right out. So watch your plants. Once you're familiar with your species plant, then you got a gauge of what to expect from your hybrids. So most of mine I grow exposed. I think it makes for an interesting plant too, and plus I use the size of the tuber in the pot as a gauge on when I need to up pot. Because if I'm down to about a ½ inch of space between the tuber and the wall of the pot, then it gets moved up to a bigger pot. Well, one of the things that I'll do is when it comes time to potting up, that initial tuber is always going to be right at the surface. Now, for example, I'll use Solovii as a good example. That plant, the tuber can grow exposed. It prefers not to. And the way I know is when I go to pot up, some of these different syringes, they will basically send out like an underground growth, almost like a rhizome, and it will form satellite tubers 3-4 inches below the surface of the soil. Syringa tubiflora does that. Solovii does that. Nordistina does that. There's a fair number of them do. And I think as I have been growing the different species, I have found that the ones that tend to have a long terminal spike, like tubiflora and Solovii, that group of syringes always seems to want to tuber. Other than that, most of them are, and I got a picture of 1 or 2 of those in there, so, but most of them can grow exposed. Okay, so this was a selfing, which did not take me anywhere that I wanted. This one is a back cross. So what I did was I took that one, this plant here, and I crossed it back with its grandparents, Parisiana. And you can see that markings are pretty nice, nice and dark and everything. It's a terminal bloomer, but I think it's kind of cool. I think that's the one I've tentatively have named as Ohio's brick house, because it's built like a brick house. But I like that one. It's still not exactly what I want, but you get some happy surprises along the way too. And another thing too that I want to mention is when you are growing out cross, when you're hybridizing within a species with two species, you don't need to grow out 2 dozen, 50, 100 plants. I usually will grow out maybe about 8 or 9 because unless your species themselves has a lot of variability, those hybrid plants are going to be almost all identical. There's not going to be a whole lot of variation. So there's no need to grow out a bazillion of them in case you get that one plant that's going to be special. I've not seen that happen. I've seen some slight variations, but nothing really major. Now, when you start crossing your hybrids with species or other hybrids, then the more you grow, the more variations you're going to see. But even in a case like that, I may start out and only grow up a dozen or so. And when they bloom, if I like what I'm seeing, I'll plant some more. If I don't, I just don't go back to this. It's still sitting in my fridge. So, and to apply that in a concept from the cactus perspective, I think the same would still hold true. I think though with cactus, I think we're looking mostly in changes in flower as the plants. There's some some variations in the different plant families and all, but since cactus grow kind of slow, that's going to put some, help the brakes a little bit. But my response to slow growing cactus is we all learned how to graft last year. So you can take those seedlings, graft them onto the cactus to really force that growth. So you can get your results sooner. I don't know how long it would take a seedling that's been grafted to bloom versus growing on its own roots, but I know it'll certainly be shorter. So there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done. Oh, and in case you're curious, when I do make a hybrid, I always mark, I forgot to mention, I mark them. I've pollinated a plant. I mark down on the little sales tag that you can get them from Walmart, who the pollen parent was. So I can keep, I got some over there too. So I always mark which flowers have been hybridized and who the parent is. So when it comes time, I don't lose track because I lost track of one and it's in my hybridizing scheme and it's really helped to grow some really awesome looking plants. You know,
you avoid plant, you have a pollen from this plant and you fertilize.
Actually, I actually did an experiment on that, and I published my results in the Gesnerian Hybridizers Association newsletter because I was curious about it too. So what I had done was I crossed Sinengia cardinalis with Sinengia iari. I don't know how it's pronounced, but I did cross both ways. And the plants actually were identical with flowers and how the actual hybrid plants looked. But the big surprise to me was the one seed parent, I think the iari one, those plants grew twice as fast as the other seed parent, which I have to attribute to all those non-genetic inheritance things like the chloroplasts and the various organelles within the individual cells that only pass through the mother. So doing a cross, I think doing it both ways, I think there's benefit to that. Because like I said, I discovered that one plant did grow much, and I had them all growing under identical conditions too. But one did grow much more robustly. So, and in the case of variegation, a lot of times in different plant families, the pollen parent has to, I'm sorry, the seed parent has to be variegated. But it's not 100% of the case because I did an experiment myself using a variegated strep as the pollen parent through, I think, 2 or 3 generations, never using a seed parent as variegation. And as a result, I lost the plant. I didn't name it, wasn't worth naming, but I'm going to say it was the world's first double variegated streptocarpus because double streps do not carry pollen. They don't, the anthers are converted to petals. So they're always pollen sterile. So the only way you could get that is through the pollen parent. So I thought it was kind of cool. He said some of these things I do for myself just to see how things are inherited. And this was another back cross. So what I've showed you before was just basically on 3 different species, Parisiana, cardinalis, and aggregata. I started pulling in some of the other flowers, other species like conspicua, eumorpha. That is not conspicua, that is velata. For some larger flowers. And these are not, they're indeterminate, not terminal flowers, because they had 2 things I wanted, larger flower size and the indeterminate growth. So some of these, you can see that I got a lot of what I wanted. I got larger flowers. I got the markings of the Parisiana that I wanted all along. Some of these are, they're really cool. I mean, they're really cool. I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes to hybridizing. I don't use other people's hybrids in my program. I've only used my own, only because I want to know what's in the genetic lineage of them.
So did you name them?
No, I have not yet. Actually, I gotta hope that I didn't lose any of them because in the fall I forced dormancy on everything and just put it in the transparent shed because I don't have room for them in the house. And I grow these out. My hybrids are more geared for growing outdoors as basket plants, patio plants, because they get large. They're not the little itty bitty ones. I need a big transparent shed. I wish I had one too. Because like I was ecstatic when I got my Zool hobby one that I got from Harbor Freight. I mean, I love my little greenhouse. Yeah, and it was.
And when you
But these, and the nice thing too is when you get some really nice syringes, they are easy to propagate. So it's easy to grow. There's a couple others. That one on the far left, I'm was going to tentatively name that Ohio's Tiger Stripes. Because it got the orchestra. And then I think this one here too, because I love the muted tones of the flower. And then I'm not sure if it's the next one or not, but I got one that was totally amazing. That's amazing too. That was one where I pulled in the balata because you can tell from the leaves. That one was but it didn't get the extra petals on subsequent growth cycles. So it hasn't done that since, but when it did it, it was pretty amazing. Now this one, and I hope I haven't lost it because my start from it did die. So I'm going to watch my pots in the transparent shed real close this spring. That is just cool. Wasn't what I was expecting. And this is one of those where one of its parents, I lost track of one of the parents in its ancestry. So it has a question mark when I write out the parentage of it. So, and actually, the seed that I was going to share, the plants, was from the same one that made this plant. So I was really wanting people to grow them out so I didn't have to grow them all out because in case I lost it, I'm hoping that maybe something similar would show up. But that was really cool. I mean, like I said, you get some really nice surprises when you're hybridizing. That's why I said you get hooked in. You get hooked and you just can't stop. Now, this is Lupitrica, and I crossed that one with my Parisiana too. My goal on that was just simply to have a nice berry plant with Parisiana type flowers. And you see the hybrid is there in the middle. It's just breaking dormancy. The one on the far right there is further along. This one, it's getting ready to bloom. And this is the bloom. I love this plant. Yes, I did. I love this one. I've used this in a couple of crosses too. What I need to do is I've been experimenting with different ways of propagating because plants with these terminal clusters and the leaves being in whorls are not the easiest to propagate. But I've stumbled on a method that's been working with some of the hybrids that I've shown already. So I'm going to try that. If I can get this to propagate easily, I might release that. Because I think it's worthy of a name. I have speciosus are they're resistant to crossing with the Syningia genus is divided up into what they call clades. So you got different groups of Syningias that are freely interfertile with others, and within the group. But as you go outside the group, you can get plants, but 90% of the time those plants are sterile. Like my Agridotic and my Parisiana that I did my initial cross, those are from different clades. The hybrid, sterile. Can't get a seed pod off of it if my life depended on it. And speciosas are like that. There's a couple plants that they will hybridize. There's the Ninja guttata, which is a lot of spots. In fact, they believe guttata to be one of the early species that was used to create the speciosas as we know them now from like about 80, 90 years ago. And then there's a species, Helleride, which was discovered, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago that was nearly extinct in the wild. That hybridizes. I've got both of those, and I've crossed those with Syningia, the speciosas, and I've got some really nice plants from them. But to get into some of the other clades, you run into a lot of resistance. I would never say no, they won't. I would only caveat that by saying it's unlikely, but it's still possible. I'm glad you asked because actually, I remember a friend of mine in England. She was a Facebook friend. She asked a question about a streptocarpella and whether or not if she did such and such a cross, would she get a white flower? And I said, well, try it and see. Well, one of her expert friends told her, oh, no, it won't happen. So you know what happened? She never made the cross. So we'll never know. So, and I actually have a hybrid that I have named and released Ohio's Never Say Never because one of the experts told me I couldn't do it. So I'm not going to say no because I've seen results. There's not a lot of them. There was one that I want to say somebody crossed Speciosa with Philodion, and the plant actually did look like it had characteristics of both plants. So I think it's possible.
I've got a species that's white with purple spots. So I'd love to cross it with my Hybridization, to see if I can get a mixing of that. And if I do it internally on the speciosa, I would hope that I'd get the strength enough to get all that from the terraform.
I'm going to say that if you don't do it, you'll never know. And if you try it, you may very well, be successful with it. Like I said, I would never dissuade anybody from attempting a pot. I might think in the back of my head, oh, you want to cross this Christmas package with this ninja? That's never going to happen. No, it's highly unlikely.
Don't get what you want. Something else.
I will say one thing though to mention when it comes to making crosses, I did it before. I said before that you need to be observant of your plant and think, kind of logically a little bit. If you're dealing with a plant that has a long pistil versus a short pistil, you'll want to generally use the plant from the pollen that has the longer pistil because those pollen grains have evolved to germinate and grow the entire length of that long pistil. So put that on the one with the small one because the pollen grains of that small flowered plant are not designed to go 3 or 4 inches. They're only designed to go 1 inch. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at your crosses. If the style of one is very long compared to the short one, pollinate the one that has the short one.
Artificially short.
You can, and people have done that. In fact, there was a famous hybridizer of Syningas back in the 70s and 80s, Ted Bona, actually did that. And currently in the Streptococcus world, there's a gene that causes some really cool looking flowers, patterns, but one of the other results of it is that it deforms the stigma and it will not accept pollen. People have been slicing the tip of that stigma off and pollinating that wet surface, of the cut, and they've gotten seed pods formed from that. So yeah, you can do that. I personally have not done that. I think just about everything I've worked on has been similar size. I mean, I've hybridized a bunch of like the small muscicola and Bacillus, but it's so hard to get any appreciable amount of pollen. It's just easier to use pollen from another plant on it instead of trying to find those 5 grains from that tiny flower to put on something else. So some of the observations that I found is like with Parisian and Leucotricha, they're both determinate, so it's not a big surprise that the hybrid is too. This was not what my original goal was, but sometimes you get sidetracked, which is cool because you get some cool stuff that way. One of the things I found is that, and these are like just observations as I go through the years, is that flower pattern from Parisian seems to be a dominant gene because it shows up in every cross. I'm sure there's modifier genes that affect the intensity of it, but it's in all of them. And like I said, that one, although it wasn't my initial goal, one of those sidetracks, I like what it looks like, so I've used it in further hybridizing too. I could have put in like hundreds of pictures, but we don't have all day. This is a Syninga tubiflora and Solovii. Tubiflora requires intense sunlight to bloom. I've had that thing for like 15 years and it never bloomed. And one year I was like, all right, I'm done with you. I had in an 8-10 inch pot, put it in the middle of my backyard where the sun beat down on it all day long. And that's what it wanted. And it bloomed. And when that thing bloomed, you could smell the fragrance from like about 40 feet away. I mean, it is just really amazing, but I wanted something that didn't require that intense sunlight to bloom. So I crossed it with Solovii, which is an easy to bloom plant. Doesn't require intense light or anything. Very easy to grow. The plants that I got, they opened up a little bit of a yellow cast, but it fades to white. And a nice plant and everything, but no fragrance at all to speak of. So I have my option of either selfing it or back crossing it to tubiflora. I did both. I don't have pictures of the selfing because they didn't give me what I wanted. But I back crossed it to tubiflora, and the flower looks more like the tubiflora. I have an all white one. I have one that's kind of pink. And I was growing them on the north side of the house outside where they had maybe an hour or two of morning sun. And I remember I was weeding out there and I thought, what is that smell? And about 5 feet away, I saw, the white one blooming. And then later the pink one came along that was nicely fragrant. So I got what I wanted in like just 2 generations. And this one's very easy to propagate. I've named one of them Ohio's Casablanca and the other one Ohio's Casa Rosa. So that's, and this is one that has tubers that it prefers to be buried. Said very easy to propagate. Now I've done hybridizing with other genera too. There's a hybrid called Echinoantha, which is a cross between a Smithiantha and Echinodes. That was Sassy Redhead, the hybrid there. That one is, I call it a noid because it's not the seed that the seed plant said it was. So anyways, I crossed those two, and I got 2 different plants out of that. One of them I call Ohio's Blue Bullets. I love all the dots on it. And the other one I call is Ohio's Tide's Big Nickel. My nephew, who's passed away, always called quarters Big Nickel, so that just struck me. But it was kind of cool. Nice thing is these have rhizomes, so you can force them in the dormancy, put the rhizomes in a baggie, you're not taking up any plant growing space. There's another one using the same Smithiantha sassy redhead with the species Echinodes mexicana. Look, orange, pale lavender. I got this Ohio's, I call it Ohio's Little Miss, and I got Ohio's Pumpkin. I have another one I didn't have a picture of. I forget what I called it, but those were pretty, I really like those. I named those after my dead. And these, I know are being grown overseas and in Mexico and in Eastern Europe and Europe. And they were surprised. One thing I noticed is that the overall shape of the Mexicana flower dominates. So I think it is dominant. So, okay, there we go. Whoops.
Because you live in Ohio, like, is there any names things that
Well, I use it because I'm the only designated hybridizer in Ohio. So I've kind of like laid claim to that. So if anybody, anybody would know that if they see a plant that's called Ohio's this or Ohio's that, they know it's mine. That's the reason why. Kind of like how that one African violet hybridizer, she's gone now. What's her name? Yeah, Buckeye. All of her plants are Buckeye this, Buckeye that. And a lot of hybridizers will do that. I thought about using my initials, but there's a hybridizer out in Europe who hybridizes Streptocarpus, DS, everything, DS this, DS that. And I want to use all 3 of my initials, so I just use Ohio's. Now this was an unnamed Semania seedling that I had, and I crossed it with my Echinodes mexicana. This is the one that I was told, no, you can't make those crosses. And that is the result of that cross. And that's being grown throughout Europe and in South Mexico, England, and well, the States too. So yeah, that's one of my favorite hybrids. Strangely enough, foxglove is a sister family of Desmarias. They're in a sister family, closely related.
now, do you get residuals?
Oh, you're not making money as a hybrid, no. Not,
Because Dan, if you are, you need to become more friendly with you.
And then you don't get transferable, you don't sold in Mexico.
oh, that'd be cool. That would be kind of cool. Actually, I even reached out to some of the sellers and they just didn't seem to be interested. And I know there was a grower in Mexico. He's a hybridizer too, and asked me if I'd be willing to share. I said, sure. I mean, I'm not stingy with my stuff. And then he in turn shared them with people. He may have sold it for all I don't know, but he's distributed them even further. So yeah, I mean, if you're nice to me, I'll share. I remember there was one time that my very first successful one, I was at this, not this one here on the left. I posted a picture. There was a guy in Portugal who demanded I send him a plant. It was like the very first one. It's like you hadn't even had a chance to form a rhizome. And he demanded I send him one. Well, you know, he never got one from me. They're like, I might be a little bit bitter, but all right. So anyways, this one, I named it out of pettiness. I just wish I could remember which person told me I couldn't do it. I wish I knew. But anyways, maybe it's bad, maybe it's good, I don't know. It was very cool. It's very, I love this. I mean, the combination of the different plants, I don't think you could have asked for a better result. So this is the case of, what will I get if I cross this with this? And sometimes you get something, wow. Now my next set, I have another Achemines and a different Samania, Gymnostoma, and that's a Achemines that had no name. I did that one on purpose, thinking, okay, this is, you know, I saw what we got on my other plant. What am I going to get this time around? So I got some similar, but very different results. These I've not named yet. I'm still, they haven't had a good growth cycle outside yet for me to see how they really do. Because I had like about 7 seedlings from that cross. They're all very similar, but I'm just trying to figure out, okay, which one is the most robust.
When you're multiplying up your hybrids, are you doing that by taking the leaf and slicing it and putting it in soil, or how do you actually take something that you know is going to be a true sample of that?
Depends on the plant. Synengias, I will do, to propagate it, I will do leaf mallet cuttings, because if you do a standard leaf cutting, too many times you will end up with a blind tuber that never sprouts. Synengia speciosa is pretty good about giving you plants. So you can like cut the midribs off and put the halves down, and at least 50% of those veins are going to give you plants. But in my experience, the other species, the success rate is really low to get them from a leaf cutting. So what I'll do is I'll do a leaf mallet cutting where I'll take a pair of leaves, cut the stem off and keep them still attached. But then I'll slice right down the middle of that stem and then plant each one individually, because that leaf joint has a dormant bud in there. And I'll get like a 90% success rate getting plants that will sprout, and the subsequent tubers are not blind. They will re-sprout on top of that. I actually have a YouTube video on that process. So if you're curious, just look me up, Daniel Steele on YouTube. I've got a handful of videos out there, and I have one on leaf mallet cuttings. And I'm saying it works. Now, when it comes to plants like these all have a scaly rhizome. And if I want to propagate, I can either break the rhizome into pieces, I can take leaf cuttings, I can take individual scales off the rhizome and plant them as if they were seeds and get plants that way. So the rhizomatous plants, you can get a lot of plants really quick.
I've got a quick question. What about seeds? Are they just way down the tube, or?
Well, and that's one of the things when you're dealing with intergenerics like this, the vast majority of those come out sterile. And it's hard to see, but I have the anthers are right here, and the pistil is right here. So the parts are there. In this case, it's just the coloring of the flower, just in the shape. I've not had success in getting any of my intergenerics to seed. It would be kind of cool. Maybe come up with the first tri-generic or something. I mean, I did try across on one of my on my Ohio's Little Miss, the one that had that pretty wine red color, I crossed it with, I don't know what I crossed it with. I got it marked. So if I get a seed pod from it, great. If not, that's okay. There's still plenty of stuff to work with. Now here I did two Achaemone species. This is Achaemone cetuana and Achaemone mexicana, similar in color and everything. And I'm just showing, put this one in here because this was a case of me trying to find out what flower type would dominate, because I've noticed like the shape of the first one, the cetuana, that one seems to completely dominate, like in crosses with Smithiantha. To look at a Caminantha with that as a parent, you wouldn't even be able to tell that there was Smithiantha even in it, because it's completely subsumed by the genes of this species. And then I found, with my own crosses with Mexicana on the other species, that one seemed to dominate. So I was curious to see, it's like, all right, what am I going to get if I cross two dominant aspects with one another? And this one actually is kind of intermediate. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but I'm not surprised at what I got. It's nothing to crow about or anything, but some of these crosses I do just to see what will happen. Part of the reason too is on the Achaemones here on the left, there was a guy, the same one that I sent some of my hybrids to down in Mexico, was attempting crosses with that type of Achaemones onto Samanias. And he was releasing plants, calling them Acamanias, and people were saying, oh, that's not a cross, there's no Samania in there or there, whatever. Well, none of them stopped him to think, well, what's dominating? You don't know. My plan this year is to take this type of Achaemones and cross it onto on a Samania just to see how the dominance works on that. Okay, and this is my last one. The flower on the left is a Smithiantha, and I crossed it with my Samania gymnastoma, and I currently have a seed pod on it right now. So this is a work in process. I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to get out of this. So I'm excited. I can't wait for that seed to ripen. But that is it. So, yes,
Stupid question.
no stupid question.
I've never pollinated anything in my life. This is the first great question. I apologize. Your work is amazing and it's exciting, One year we bought like 15 different lily plants and they were all different colors and absolutely beautiful. And we enjoyed them for the year. And the next year couldn't wait for them to come up, and there must have been an aggressive bumblebee or something, because every one of them turned in dark orange. It was really ugly. And I was curious if that was pollinated by a was that the base type thing?
I'm going to say that that's probably not it, because something's happened to your bulb, some mutation or virus or something, because for a pollination to result in an orange flower, you'd have to get a seed pod, then you have to get the seed, plant the seed, and for a lily, probably wait 3 or 4 years or longer to get that first flower. So I'm going to say that there's probably something cultural going on.
In the soil or like the soil fine.
Yeah, because sometimes a plant when it grows, it's programmed to turn this gene on, turn this gene off, this, that, or whatever. And depending upon cultural conditions, it's going to affect what happens as that plant is growing. I've got actually, it's kind of interesting. I have a begonia that when I grow it outdoors during the summer, it's white. But I'm growing it in the house right now, in the basement, on the bottom shelf, where it's a lot cooler, and it's more pink than white. So cultural, I think we might be dealing with cultural. I know that sometimes you'll get a mutation that takes over a plant. That happens. We call them sports.
And the next year, some of them did come back. And some of
I would say there's something cultural going on. I don't think it's the case of pollination.
It made no sense.
But I will say though, as far as hybridizing, don't feel like it's beyond your scope. I mean, I've never had any, with all of my stuff, it's just sitting back and observing the plants, and watching them, what they're doing. And pretty soon you start to piece this together and that together. And then what I've learned is like, you can apply that to just about anything. Plus, it's like, once you get that first, cautionary thing too. If you do attempt something and you get a seed pod and then you grow it, be critical of what you get. I have seen people post on some of the Facebook groups, oh, here's the first flower if I cross of this with this. And you look at it and it's like, okay, you've got a hybrid was your seed parent. This is your pollen parent, but yet this plant looks exactly like your seed parent. I think that person had a something and not an actual cross. So you'll want to be, I'm not saying, I don't want to dissuade you. That's the last thing I want to do is ever dissuade anybody from wanting to attempt. But just be mindful that you might have gotten something, which is great because it gives you the experience of growing from seed and everything else. But if it's a something, then it's like, okay, what did I do? What can I do differently to move forward? Like I said, once you get that first successful cross and everything, it's like, even if it's not quite what you wanted, and then you do that next one, it's like, then you just get sucked in. You do.
So I've seen maybe your decision, what to keep and what to stop, and how do you actually put yourself?
Oh, you want a good, Kathy, I don't know if you remember it. I did a hybridizing program once for the Violet Club. And I had my little brownie tray full of streptococcus seedlings. And my goal in that particular cross was to get some variegated seedlings. So as those plants grew, I was plucking out the ones that were variegated. And I brought it in and I was telling people, it's like, one of the things you got to do is sometimes you just got to be heartless. And if it's not what you wanted, and sometimes I'm saying this, and if it's not what you wanted, you just throw them away. And I threw it in the trash. Somebody just like pearl clutching and everything. But once they've grown, actually I will occasionally plant some of my seedlings directly in the ground and use them as bedding plants. And then let the winter kill them off. I mean, most of what I get now, they're not undesirable, and I can give those away because they're still nice looking. I mean, if they're nasty, plants with weak floppy stems or anything, that's a decision to make. But if they're still nice plants, but just not what I want, I just give it away. Or plant like that. And like I said, they're not ugly, they're just not what I'm looking for to them. So I hope I've encouraged people to try. Not, it doesn't have to be cylindrical, it doesn't have to be cactus. I mean, it can be begonias, it can be daylilies. I remember I even dabbled with daylilies and I grew some seeds out and I had some daylilies that grew and I saw a pattern on one and I thought, where the heck did that come from? I mean, I can't remember what they call a pattern or anything, but I'm like, none of my plants had it. This is my seed. And then I remembered I stole pollen off of one of the plants here. So the whole idea of hybridizing is a lot easier and you can get a lot of information is available on the internet now. So you can find a lot of how-tos. And so for different plant families, I mean, there's a lot of programs, YouTube videos on daylilies, which I think are cool. Iris.
I think that if you were to do a daylily, you have in your garden, blossom, you really don't know the parent of that plant either.
No.
Because they're all hybrid.
Right.
I mean, they're.
And that makes it fun too, because when you start crossing hybrids with hybrids, then you're getting a nice mix-up of genes, and you're not, each one is going to be a surprise. I mean, it's like, it's one thing when you cross two species, you expect it to be fairly uniform. But if you take those hybrids that you just created and cross those with themselves, then you're going to start getting a remix of those genes, and you're going to start seeing variability. And then when you're dealing with some of my plants now, I mean, I've probably got about 9 or 10 different species in their parentage. So I'm getting a lot of genes popping up and, colors and stuff. I've tried to do some experiments to figure out how certain things are inherited. Like some of the syringes have this hood, it's called a galea. I'm not a fan of that. And I would think, okay, a single gene is controlling it maybe. Well, when I did a cross with that, I still get a galea, but it's about half the size. And then it's like, okay, I cross that one with something else. I still get it, but it's like the petals that just don't roll up, they're just hanging down. So, and I still haven't figured out some of the genetics on some of these things. So, I mean, it's fun. I mean, it's fun. I mean, if I didn't do it, I mean, if I didn't like it, I would have stopped a long time ago.
Is there a way to tell the plants you're buying still to begin with?
If they're blooming, you can usually check and see if there's pollen. That'll let you know if it's pollen still or not. But typically, a sterile plant, in my experience, the anthers end in like a shrivelly tip with no pollen or anything at all like that. To be seed sterile, there's really no way to tell. I think that if a person is persistent enough, from what I've read, especially in the Gesneri family, if you're persistent enough, eventually you may get lucky and get a seed pod. One of the things, though, that you have to watch is, and I didn't even talk about that, is most of your plants are with a normal set of chromosomes are called diploids. They got a normal set. Occasionally, a hybrid is sterile, and it's a diploid, and they've discovered that if it's exposed to certain chemicals, it can double its chromosome count and become a tetraploid, which makes it fertile. And then they use these tetraploids, cross them onto a diploid, then you get a triploid, which are generally sterile. And if you can double those, you get a hexaploid. So those are, I think, more common. I think daylilies, there's a lot of tetraploids in daylilies and triploids too. I don't know if that extends into the iris family of mountains.
Usually they'll tell you that by commercial daylilies, they'll tell you in there.
They use the same chemical that they use for daylilies, colchicine.
Colchicine, there's another, I actually did an experiment once. There is a pre-emergent herbicide that is supposed to cause polyploidy. It's the chemical that's in prune. And I did an experiment with African violet leaves, trying to get different exposure times to it. And I never got a plant, but I got results. And I think the problem was they were exposed too long, because I think I ended up with probably octoploidy or something. I don't know, because I could see a change in the leaf as that chemical was going through, and it was getting like really stiff and brittle, and you could see it extending through the leaves. And I would see little tiny plantlets coming along, but they never got beyond like 2 or 3 leaves. I'm not recreating, I've not done it since. I should try that again. So something happened with it. But yeah, there's colchicine, they still use that, and I can't remember, there's another chemical too I've heard, but I'm blanking of it.
What do you use to track your process? Like, are you studying paper type person or just spreadsheet?
No.
person?
I used to be spreadsheet, used to be paper and everything, but I came across a program that I purchased on that I forget the name of the company, created to tracking hybrids for daylilies. It was a daylily hybrid program. And it's really cool. I need to go in there and update it because I can put in my parent plants, I can, say how many plants I got and everything, and then I can put in pictures of my seedlings. And then if I use those, and I can set it up as a parent plant from another thing, and cross it with this one. And whatever comes out of it, I can click on it and it'll show me the whole tree. Really cool. I just cannot think of the name of it. But it wasn't I think maybe the program was maybe $30. And I need to get in there and update because I have it, but I've not been good at transferring my data.
That I didn't know if people were aware, I don't know the Cactus Society or the Cactus Society of America has this. Gazinarian Society has subgroups, and one of the subgroups of the Gazinarian Society is the Hybridizers Association. And you pay a fee, it might be $25 for 3 years. They can put out a newsletter. And the other freebie thing is the hybridizers send seeds to one person that if you want the seeds, write to them and they send you the seeds for free. And Dan has several of his hybrids on that list that is free. And I think you're allowed to get seeds 4 times a year, 5 times a year. Yeah, it's something, but it's a good way to try to grow some different plants and different seedlings. And there's also some kinds of seeds thing, and it tells separate, websites, and it tells us stuff that's sterile.
Yeah, that's a good website, Synergia and Friends, because they've got some links that breaks out all the different Synergia clades. A lot of pictures on primary crosses between the species, and I think even 1 or 2 of my pictures are on there.
The guy who was this I'll think of it, but he would be the one, he was doing species. He was also the president of the association.
He passed away. I just found out he passed away. Jay Despico or something? Yeah. I just found that out the other day. Yeah, he's a nice guy. Young.
So they do have hybridized, like, subbooks and stuff for cactuses. Most of it is Christmas cactus hybridizer. So it's usually broken down to epiphyllum hybridizers rather than like parts of the book. But I know they exist. I just don't know too much about my stuff.
Well, I would encourage everybody to give it a hand. There's like the concepts that we talked about here can apply to any plant group. Begonias, I think, are easy to work with. Seeds easy to collect, easy to grow.
And we had Andy,
Yeah.
he's done themselves hybridizing just because he has a jack board. They just mounted a lot themselves and some stuff on. He just, but he got a very big one, which he's been experimenting with.
I remember talking about that. Yeah, I'm hoping that the plants I got from the seed he shared, what was it, 2 years ago? I'm hoping they're big enough to bloom this year. I got some of them. I thought it's cool. It's like, most of them were a nice green and everything, but I had one in there that was a deep, dark, ruby red on the leaves. I thought that was really cool stuff.
And it seems to stay very red stripes.
Oh.
Like it always looks like a sun strip.
I think I remember there is a subgenus peripheral size. You know, that might.
When I was researching to do this program, I was trying to get into the cactus family to see if it's divided up similar to the Rosemary family. And I couldn't find any good solid information. It's like with the different genus and which one, I just, which is why I didn't have any info. I was going to try to pull that in, but I just couldn't find anything.
It's like, there's a gal I follow on YouTube. I think her name is just Expedite Cactus. And she'll go through, like she'll say, oh, Quetzal's obligato or whatever it is, and she'll go all the way back and she'll do all the lineage for it. She'll be like, yeah, there's like 3 different specimens, like initial specimens in 3 different botanical libraries. And these are the differences between them and which one is the actual species and which 2 were things that were similar and look like it, but are not. And then she'll go into like all the genetics and stuff. And so far, it's been very, very difficult for people to do it without actual genetics.
I know. That's what I found out. I like to watch that one guy, Crime Pays But Botany Does.
Yeah.
And I know he had someone who was out west, and apparently I think some of these cholla species, they don't even reproduce sexually anymore because they're sterile hybrids, natural hybrids, and because of the nature of chollas, they just stick to you and then they fall off somewhere up. It's like, how do you classify some of those things?
Yeah.
I'm thinking cylindrical Divisia might one of those. Because I've never heard of anybody growing them from seed. And for that matter, I grew it briefly, and it's like, my plant never sets. But again, it may be a case of when you grow one plant, and what's it gonna do? It's gonna sell. Most of my green pears self-ribbon.
Yeah, mine too. Mine is like,
Choyas may be a little,
my cholla will set fruit pods, and we'll call it fruits. Right,
dry or flesh, you can still.
yeah. But the whole thing is like, I hope I've encouraged some people to try, share your results. I think it's fun. Keeps me out of trouble and off the streets.
I like thinking about the street.
The hardest thing is to resist that cutting. It's like, but I'm good. I don't do that good. But there's lots of groups out there, Facebook, lots of YouTube videos. I did a program once, for our club entitled, there's a YouTube video for that. And there is. I've seen them on hybridizing. I've been watching a lot of them on grafting cactus. Those are always fun. My favorite cactus one is my cactus caffeine lady. I just love her. And then there's plenty of stuff on just hybridizing in general. It's like when there's nothing on TV, I got smart TV, I'll go to YouTube and I'll just like start typing in hybridize and then pick a plant. I've learned how to hybridize zinnias. So if I want to hybridize zinnias this year, I know how to do that now.
Thank you so much.
I can talk all day on something I'm passionate about.
We do, since Monica is here, we do, some news that we can share to the club and everybody. So, let me stop with recording.
Oh, I forgot that was, I never noticed. I hope nobody wanted in.
No,
Oh, and for what it's worth, everybody, if you want to go to a African Violet Club meeting, I'm there. I will. I'm not shy about talking about hybridizing.
Yeah. You're been recording, the recording. So, you know, Missy, Melissa, who has been with her for, he's a little bit longer than me, so we have to. Yeah, like 3 years, yeah. Elsie was. Elsie. Well, Elsie and Melissa. Yes. So some of you may have heard last fall that something called that and they've been working through that for August. Probably passed away already. Unexpectedly, I guess I could say, they got the treatment the student that they needed, and, he was in an off cycle, and got him a curveball. So they are dealing with everything that comes with that. There will be opportunities for, as time goes on, for people to help out with Missy and her plants, if you'd like to do that. Some of it may be, very open-ended, such as I haven't had the capacity or time to think about what's in the past, and someone just comes, does it need watering, does it need this, does it need that, type of stuff. So, as I hear of opportunities, I'll if you'd like to help, let's go out. 33 north and then west of Columbus, East Liberty. Wow. Yeah, she comes from there. It's from their meeting, not very far from the world. Right. Correct. Yes. So yeah, it's been really, really tough for her for a while, but especially so. Is there something that the club word, but is there something that the club can do that would be a benefit or nation? Right now, I would honestly say probably not. So some of you who did know her, her friends with her on Facebook, may have heard already. And you've reached out, she does appreciate that. She most likely is not reflected because one of the things that was happening is a lot of people reaching out, and there's just not capacity to mentally or physically respond to all of that. So, I did talk to her yesterday. And she knows that you sent it to that. And at some point she'll probably be fine.
Does she have an address?
I could get it.
Because there's kind of this old fashioned.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they're interested in something like that, it's just the thought, and Monica's going to be the person who recording as well. And then, two, I posted in our yesterday, if you did order the cookies, from, our little LC member, Melissa dropped those off for me yesterday, so I was back there for you. If anyone was interested in more cookies, I do have a couple, in fact, extras that I'll see with some that you want to try with Melissa, you can have them. Missy did want to come today, but also was invited to a wedding party. And it was really important to try to help her to have some normalcy. So they were not able to come. I just tell people about the one. Okay, so, on that note, thank you all very much for being here. We if you or anyone else you know, needs the support of the club for something, if you hear about something, feel free to reach out. That's what we're here for. We are a community of people that enjoy each other and finding savvy, very odd things. So, but feel free to grab some books. There's hot cocoa, tea, and coffee. I drink one cup of coffee, so I have some sugar free. But you can mix it with hot cocoa and make yourself a very nice mocha. But yes, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. And you will be getting emails about the March things as soon as I finalize it. Okay. Last list. Thanks, Tommy. Hi,